So that girl I met on eHarmony.
Yeah.
We're out to dinner last night, and like a klutz, I tipped my drink all over myself.
Oh, no.
And it's all down my shirt, a horrible stain, so embarrassing. And you'll never guess.
What?
She smiles, picks up her drink, spills it all over her top. So now we're...
No way.
Amazing, right?
At eHarmony, you'll find someone you can be yourself with. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up for eHarmony today. So that guy I met on eHarmony, yeah, we're out together last night and I step off a curb and snap, heel breaks right off my shoe.
Oh no.
So I say, hell with it, take them off so I'm barefoot, and you'll never guess.
What?
He leans over, takes off his shoes and socks, and now we're both...
You're joking.
Amazing, right?
At eHarmony, you'll find someone you can be yourself with. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up for eHarmony today.
If you'd rather not spend your future as a frighteningly fragile lady always on the verge of a disastrous fall, there's an easy superpower you can develop that will make your life better now and possibly be the best way to prevent a loss of independence in the future. And almost nobody is talking about it. Here's the inside scoop. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 184, the body part that gives you anti-aging superpowers. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hi, my friend, and welcome to the episode today. Thank you so much for being here. You are fantastic. How is your 14 minutes and 24 seconds? What did you decide to spend it on? I know you can achieve greatness in 2025 by getting better just 1% at a time. Today, we're going to talk about a critically important aspect of independence. If you don't want to slowly stop living before you die and go about your older years as a fragile ornament, always on the precipice of catastrophe, then you want to know about this capacity for awesomeness now. It's not on most people's list of life-changing abilities to develop, but it should be. It's incredible and not super complicated or difficult. Are you in? I hope so. It's a great way to not be normal. So while it's still a long time down the road, the biggest cause of accidental debility and death and the instigating event that leads to a dramatic decline in independence in the elderly is falls. That's no surprise. I'm sure you've heard that before. Something I hadn't realized, but that makes sense, is that the decline in muscle mass and strength and independence that happens as we age isn't a steady slope downward. Typically, it'll stay just below steady for a while, then take a sharp nosedive at some kind of event, like a bout of pneumonia or something, then stay steadily low for a while, then take another sharp nosedive at the time of a fall that becomes unrecoverable. Anyway, that changed my perception of how to avoid the long, slow rot experience of aging, not only trying not to decline by a small percentage per year, but also being vigilant about avoiding major mobility-reducing events and taking rehabbing from them seriously. Avoiding big deconditioning events like accidents is paramount. I'm a huge believer that mature women have a tremendous amount of value to offer society regardless of their physiologic circumstances, but there are a few things to optimize for to prevent the long, slow rot from becoming your reality, like overall strength, overall muscle mass, balance, and mobility. But the foundation for fall prevention and balance is something we almost never talk about: toe strength and foot strength. Have you thought about your foot strength before? I know some people think about their hand strength, which is great. I have one of those dynamometer things to measure your grip strength, and my boys love to test theirs. But how much have you paid attention to the strength of your toes? Have you ever realized how critical it is to your ability to live the life that you want to live? I think we all tend to take our feet for granted unless they start to hurt, but even then our focus is rarely on optimizing them or strengthening them. But what if it was? The answer is we'd be better at being human. I learned a ton of stuff from Dr. Courtney Conley, who co-owns a foot clinic called Gait Happens. Totally check her out for more information. She goes way in depth with the names of all the little bones and ligaments and tendons and stuff. In all of her comprehensive explanations that she understands so well, the main takeaways I think everyone should know are that a huge risk for falls comes from toe weakness. Almost all foot pain and problems come from foot weakness or imbalance. That a great deal of other chronic pain conditions start from or are contributed to by foot weakness, and that almost all of this weakness and imbalance comes from wearing shoes. Our feet are incredibly muscular and give our brain a lot of information about our surroundings. They have to shapeshift in pretty incredible ways to be able to absorb shock and propel us around the world. We have 26 bones and 33 joints in each foot, and understanding how they all work together with all the ligaments and muscles is complicated, but it's incredibly beautifully designed. When any of the cutaneous receptors, muscle spindles, joint proprioceptors, and so on aren't working optimally, it impairs our ability to interact with our environment. Lack of toe and foot strength makes everything in our life harder. Every time you walk, your Achilles tendon experiences a force 4 times your body weight. Double that when you're running. The calcaneonavicular area experiences loads up to 11 times your body weight when you're running. That's like 1,600 pounds of force. Incredible. And it's perfectly designed to be able to handle that. The problem is that if you mess with it, you lose it. When you prevent your toes from splaying the way they're designed, or you alter the level plane that your foot should land on, such as having your heel higher than your toes, or you add a bump like under your arch or unnatural squishiness, you weaken your foot. Your foot is strongest and least prone to pain and injury when it's forced to walk barefoot all the time. You need to have a big enough range of motion, like flexing and pointing and inverting and everting your feet, but you also need to be able to control that motion. Before I knew that it was basically nonsense, I was told by a running expert that I was an overpronator, so I would buy running shoes with the pronation guide in them. I thought that I was just an overpronator the same way I just have straight hair or whatever. Many years later, I now know that my problem is that I can't or couldn't, I haven't checked it lately, maybe it's resolving, control my range of motion. Pronation is a part of the gait cycle, but if you speed through it due to weakness and can't control it, then it causes problems. And the solution isn't buying a special shoe for the rest of your life. It's strengthening your feet. If you have any kind of foot pain, I think it's worth checking out functional foot specialists like Dr. Courtney. And if you don't have foot pain, I think it's worth checking out functional foot specialists and learning more so you can prevent future pain and make yourself much more fall-proof in the future. Plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, flat feet, bunions, hammer toes, stress fractures, overpronation, underpronation, frequent ankle sprains, even chronic knee, hip, and other pains, and increased likelihood of an ACL tear all start with and can be relieved by foot strength. Pretty wild. If you're in a lot of pain, there's still a recovery period, but you should always have an exit strategy from orthotics and a re-strengthening strategy after immobilization in a cast or walking boot. Any instability or weakness in your feet alters the way you walk, which affects your whole body. Toe strength specifically can be a huge, huge advantage in your later years. You should establish the strength now and maintain it as you get older. There are a couple of ways you can measure your toe strength. You can buy a toe dynamometer. That's a little card you put under your toes and push your toes into. I've never tried it before, but it would be interesting to know. There's another test where you could stand completely straight, facing a wall, and lean your whole body forward and see how far you can go before you fall forward into the wall. The more toe strength you have, the farther you can travel while still holding yourself up. If you measure from your belly button to the wall when you're standing straight up, and then again when you're leaning forward under control, the distance between your starting and ending point should be 4.5 inches or more. It's called the anterior fall envelope. If you try that out and feel your toes catching you, you can get an idea of why having strong toes is so critical to preventing you from falling down. Most falls happen at the beginning of trying to walk. If you have a very small anterior fall envelope and something unexpected happens just as you're starting to take a step, you're going to end up on the ground. Toe strength, people, is so important. A researcher named Dr. Karen Mickle has shown that toe strength is the single best predictor for falling. That's a really big deal. If you have an older loved one, see if you can convince them to strengthen their toes. Actually, do it with them because you want to strengthen yours too. If you don't want to suddenly stop living before you die, don't fall down as an older adult. It can be catastrophic. Toe weakness is also a good predictor that you'll develop plantar fasciitis and or fasciosis, so strong toes decrease your chances of that painful condition. This is an aside, but something else I hadn't thought much about regarding risk of falls as you age is that if you have kyphosis, that hunched over little old lady posture, your vision is naturally angled downward and you lose a lot of your peripheral vision. So if something comes out of nowhere, like a little kid running down the aisle at the supermarket or a dog running down the sidewalk, you're much more likely to fall. I heard that from bone expert Belinda Beck. So interesting. So if you maintain upright posture when you're naturally looking forward rather than down, and good peripheral vision, and you have strong toes, you're hugely more protected from accidental falls as an older person. And having good strength and muscle mass, obviously. Those are critically important. Something else that happens when your feet are able to move the way they were designed to move with the toe splay, controlled pronation, propulsion, etc., is that there are receptors that get tugged on from ligaments and fascia and everything that give your brain information about the world and your ability to interact with it. There have been studies that I don't quite understand showing that there is an optimal amount of muscle tone in your foot to protect it from injury that differs for all kinds of different situations. So each situation needs a different amount of protective muscle tone to protect your foot and elevate your arch the perfect amount. And this signal for how much muscle tone is called for comes from sensory information that gets blocked when we wear shoes that do all the things that normal shoes do for our feet. Preventing our toes from splaying out, preventing the bend in the soles of our feet, keeping our heel elevated above our toes, stuff like that. When we let our feet be free, we collect a ton of useful information that we don't even know we're using to our benefit. According to Dr. Conley, starting at age 50, it takes 20% more pressure to stimulate sensory nerve receptors in your feet. And from ages 50 to 85, the sensitivity of those receptors typically decreases by 75%. So, typically, as you get older, you lose the ability to feel things with your feet. That's another reason why old people fall more easily than young people. The more you can do to maintain the sensory ability of your feet, the better. Some ideas for that are to walk barefoot and to walk on different surfaces like stone, grass, sand, etc. Also, exercise helps increase circulation to the nerve fibers, which helps improve nerve health. Having optimal blood sugar levels is important, and having stronger muscles in your feet is helpful for having more sensation there. The sooner you start strengthening your feet, the better. You'll enjoy rewards now and all along the way, and your 80s and 90s will be so much safer and more enjoyable if you keep your foot strength all along the way. So, how do you strengthen your feet? The best way would be to work with a functional foot specialist. Dr. Courtney has an online course for $247. I think it would be money well spent. I don't get anything for saying that. I haven't taken her course and I'm not an expert, but I do work on some of the exercises that I learned from her. I don't think I could verbally describe them well enough to actually be beneficial to you. I use a TheraBand with them, but one thing you want to be able to do is push down into the ground with your big toe only and not any of your other toes, then with your other toes only and not your big toe. You could work on that without the band. Keep your 4 toes down on the floor while lifting your big toe up and down for several reps, then keep your big toe down on the ground while lifting your other 4 toes up and down. Can you do it? It's harder than you might think. I also do something similar with the band with just my pinky toe. Dr. Courtney also recommends using toe spacers. They're just a way to force your toes to act more like they're supposed to instead of the way they've learned to move by being trapped in shoes for 40 years. Stephen Soshin, the owner of Zero Shoes, calls regular shoes foot coffins, and I think that's so great. Unfortunately, walking in foot coffins for 40 years alters the way our feet naturally move, even barefoot, so toe spacers can help to train them back to their natural pattern. You can walk with them barefoot around your house, or they'll fit in barefoot shoes with a wide enough toe box. I got mine from Dr. Courtney's website, gatehappens.com. I love wearing them when I lift at the gym. I feel different when my toes are in the right position when I'm lifting heavy things. Surprisingly, I love them the most when I'm doing strict shoulder presses, but I also do like them with squats and deadlifts. I try to wear them at other times of the day too, and I do think that they make a difference. Foot exercises usually need to start with making the connection between your brain and your foot. Like, can I even move toes 2 through 5 independently of my big toe? And do I feel my arch lengthening and widening as I move through a step? And then you can get into more advanced work. Another thing you can work on for toe strength is standing facing a wall, maybe 2 or 3 feet away or so, and put a wedge-shaped piece of foam or a folded towel under just your toes. Then stay completely straight and lean forward toward the wall and feel your toes and the arch of your foot engage. If you do that 20 times or so and don't do weird things like curl your toes or anything, then that will strengthen your toes and improve what's called your anterior fall envelope that we talked about before. That's that toe strength needed to help prevent you from falling. That's a super awesome thing to do. You also want to practice pronating. When I was told I was an overpronator, I always thought pronation was something to avoid. It's not. It's something to mindfully control until controlling it becomes automatic. One exercise is to just stand on one foot with the knee slightly bent and to just feel the foot engage and feel the ground. Then you pretend you're pushing a gas pedal with the ball of your foot to feel it even more. But it only works to strengthen you appropriately if you're engaging your soleus muscle at the back of your leg. That should get really tired, almost as if you're doing calf raises. Allowing your arch to widen and lengthen and relaxing your tibialis anterior, which is that guitar string-like tendon at the front of your ankle. If those things aren't all done correctly, standing on one foot won't strengthen you correctly. Some people just naturally learned ways to compensate for moving incorrectly, so they use the wrong muscles because they need to do anything to prevent them from falling, but they're making balance harder on themselves without realizing it. That's why this stuff is so important, why having someone who knows what they're doing watch you and teach you is so valuable. A great many foot pain problems are related to some sort of foot weakness. Even ankle, knee, hip, and back pain can be related to foot weakness. Plantar fasciitis, bunions, hammer toes, flat feet, shins, splints, and Achilles tendonitis are all from foot weakness and instability. Having strong feet makes your life easier and more comfortable now, and keeping them strong will decrease the likelihood that you will become a dangerously fragile lady who depends on assistance from others to be able to move or go anywhere. There are tons of other things that go into this, like ankle mobility and just being good at feeling the ground under your feet. If you do ever have a foot injury, you also want to go to a functional provider who doesn't just immobilize your foot. That can feel good and be the right thing to do, but you need to have some kind of strengthening exercises for rehabilitation. And once you get out of your walking boot or whatever, your muscles have been weakened and you for sure need to strengthen them strategically. And if you've ever been given orthotics to use for a condition, you should have an exit strategy for them. Most people think you need to use the same orthotics for the rest of your life. That's what I used to think. Not so. Once you appropriately strengthen your feet, you'll be able to function without them. It might take a couple of years, but you shouldn't have to use them forever. Foot strengthening exercises are a high leverage activity that will give your future self a huge advantage. There was a study by Sarah Ridge that studied 3 groups. A controlled group that did no intervention, a group that regularly did a foot strengthening program, and a group that just wore functional shoes, no other intervention. They looked at the strength of 4 different foot muscles that help prevent foot pain and injuries at the beginning of the study and at the end. At the end of the study, the functional footwear group and the foot strengthening exercise group were almost identical. So you can get all the benefits of foot strengthening exercises just by changing your shoes. Now, if you change your shoes and do foot exercises, you'll definitely be in a much better place. But the benefits of barefoot shoes are enormous, and they don't take any additional time out of your day. I don't get anything out of recommending any kind of shoes, but I wear Zero shoes almost exclusively, Zero with an X. I think I have 10 pairs, maybe 11. My feet hurt pretty much continuously for 41 years or so until I switched to them, and now they almost never hurt. There are other brands of functional footwear like Vivo Barefoot. I have 1 pair of Vivos, and I love them too. There is a website called Anya's Shop, Anyas Shop, That's a collection of different minimalist shoe brands. It's a really fun website just to look at. Again, no affiliation whatsoever. She has a fit guide that's helpful based on the shape of your feet too. If you're interested in minimalist shoes, you can also listen to my episode 80, Your Shoes Affect How You Age. It really does matter. Your shoes influence the mechanics of your whole body, the strength of your feet, and your ability to recover your balance, both when you have them on and when you have them off. So it's important. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you want to be able to live more as you get older rather than less, you need strong, stable toes and feet. Don't take them for granted and don't restrict their movement or ability to sense the ground. I'll put lots of links in the show notes to places you can shop for shoes, information about Dr. Courtney Conley and her clinic, and online courses and shop where you can get her toe spacers. It's worth your time to think about this stuff, I promise. Next week, we're going to talk about the monster under your bed that's making you stop living before you die. Until then, get ripped feet and swole toes. That sounds gross, but you know what I mean. And don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.